This was updated January 2025. Video game has exploded in popularity ever since the home video game console was developed, and begging your mom to drive you to the arcade became a thing of the past. Now you could sit in your room and play until your heart was content. Unfortunately, video game developers have found more and more ways to get you to play longer and longer, leading to a new problem that is now breaching the surface: video game addiction. With the invention of in-game purchases, developers became even more inclined to get kids addicted. Good old dollar bills. Now, I will say, because there's a lot of things going through in the UK right now regarding in-game purchases. There's a lot of legal stuff going around with in-game purchases at this time. One being obviously the massive win with Epic over Apple for the 30% developer fee that was in place and not allowing users to make purchases outside of the shop. And then obviously Fortnite recently got added back to iOS. And so on that side, it's like, okay, so we're winning there. We're stopping, this monopolistic behavior from Apple. But then the actual company Epic, in my humble opinion, and I could go on about all this stuff for days, but they have, because obviously my kids play Fortnite, I play Fortnite with them. They do have predatory monetization systems in the fact that they sell you the V-Bucks. And the V-Bucks are always sold for a price, but then the amount of V-Bucks you have to spend on an item always leaves you with leftover V-Bucks. And you can never clear out and have 0 V-Bucks. The UK is working on something right now where they're going to prevent that by forcing them to put a real money price on each item that's in the game, which means if I go to the game and my son says, hey, I want this skin, as opposed to paying, and the skin is $8, as opposed to going and buying $10 worth of V-Bucks, and then buying the $8 skin and having $2 left over in these useless V-Bucks in-game currency, I can just buy the skin for $8 and have a zeroed out balance. I think that that should be put in place. I think there should be regulations surrounding that, because especially as kids don't understand that monetary trick that they're playing. And I think that that's really important. That being said, I think you can take things too far. This may be one of them, but video game addiction and the ramifications it's having on young people have led to a new legal frontier. So the lawsuit alleges that certain video game companies are playing a deliberate role in getting kids and teens addicted to gaming for the purpose of profits. The plaintiffs are claiming that these companies created and sold games that were meant to be addictive, and they especially wanted to hook young players. The lawsuit claims that new video games have stronger focus on player rewards, feedback loops, and small purchases players can make inside the games. They claim that these microtransactions get teens' brains hooked in a way that goes beyond just wanting to play and more into the realm of having to play. I think this is so obviously battle passes are in everything now, and I do think battle passes are Look, I'm old school, so everything that this article is talking about as far as microtransactions, battle passes, this like fear of missing out that they basically used to be predatory. I think all of that stuff is bad, right? And it's extremely frustrating. I also have, as a game, I'm an old school gamer, right? I've been playing for years and years. One of the best feelings ever is accomplishing something in a video game that gives you a reward that is visible to other players in the game, right? So you take World of Warcraft and the gear that you're wearing and the mount that you have in like vanilla World of Warcraft, like meant that you were really good at the game. And that was a good thing. I think that's a positive thing. It teaches you as an individual that if you stick with something and work for something, that you will get rewarded in kind. And then you will also receive the admiration of your peers. And this is a healthy social and economical interaction within video games, right? But what is shifted into now is that every skin, every cosmetic is paid for in cash and requires zero other than external work, right? So you have your external work that you do at your 9 to 5 that you can spend on that, but it requires that external work for you to do it, but no in-game work. So there's no driving factor. And I think this part's dangerous from the kid perspective because the kids don't have a real grasp on money or the concept of working for something to get something in return. And I think that microtransactions, cosmetic skins, and so on are not as appealing to me. Like if I see somebody with the latest skin in Fortnite, it means jack shit to me. I don't care, right? At all, because it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean the same as it did, back in the day in, like I said, like vanilla World of Warcraft, when you come across somebody with a badass mount or I forget the horse mount, right? The undead horse mount in vanilla. I draw too many blanks, but it just doesn't have the same meaning. So I agree with this article from the perspective of these practices are bad. So I would say that, right? But it says one child referred to as DG has faced real hardships, including emotional distress, diminished social interactions, loss of friends, and a range of disorders, including depression, attention deficit, hyperactive disorder, and oppositional defiant disorder. Now, all of these disorders, I don't want to, look, I'm not a medical professional. All I really know is that all of these disorders that are mentioned here are subjectively diagnosed. So you can't objectively diagnose these disorders necessarily. And by that, I mean, you can't take a blood test and say you have it. It's not like cancer where you can take a blood test or take a test, a biopsy, and say you have it, right? These are what I would call subjective disorders. And the problem with the subjective disorders in relation to an article like this is that then making that correlation, right? Like correlation is not causation and it's subjective. So you're basing, a subjective diagnosis and then trying to correlate that and claim causation from video games when in fact, I would argue it's probably more upbringing. And this is just, unfortunately, a sign of the broader societal trend to claim victimhood over accepting accountability for the failures of yourself as a parent. And that is where I see that's my opinion of this lawsuit kind of summed up, which is I agree that these practices are bad, but as a parent, you should be able to take accountability for these practices and accountability for allowing your child to participate in them in a manner that was unhealthy, right? And that's the way I feel about it. So that's what's been going on with this lawsuit. So, right. And obviously we went off on a huge tangent, which was like, there are lawsuits in which a company creates a product that, with full knowing that will damage the physical health of an individual, right? In the case of earplugs sold to the army, and a lawsuit in that particular case is warranted, right? Because you were forced to use that product, and that product was also known to damage you, and therefore there should be some sort of legal ramification for that, financial compensation, etc. But then there's like the flip side where we are utilizing, subjective diagnoses to claim harm against a company for something that is voluntary to do. Does that make sense? So I don't agree with this from the perspective of being a lawsuit, but I do agree with them on the fact that I do think that there are poor practices going on in video games right now. I've been talking about this for a long time too, so it is like pretty close. I've been against like obviously I was around back when Oblivion released with the first horse armor. I was super against that. I hated it. And I've always disliked microtransactions, battle passes, etc. And then the hard part is too, I am hypocritical in the fact that I do participate in those to a certain extent. Because like there is that other side of me that's like, I don't need to be overtly negative about all of it, because then it kills the enjoyment across the board. And I do think that there is something to be said for like enjoying those outlets, whether it's video games, movies, etc., music and whatnot, and putting aside my cynicism to enjoy that with a child. Because I do think, like, I always go back to remembering being a kid. Do you guys remember like being a kid and how impactful like every little thing was, right? The first time you saw Star Wars, the first time you played Super Mario Brothers, you know, the first time you did anything, right? The first time you got your feelings hurt and how impactful that was, right? Like all of the, like those first time experiences. And so I try to always look at things from the perspective of like I did when I was a child, and remember that like those things are exciting, right? Like the Marvel universes or playing Fortnite or all of that sort of thing. So it's like, it's always this constant battle of like, as you get older, you see the hypocrisies and the evil done in the world and the way these things are manipulated, but then you have to reel that back in and say, but you don't have to always harp on that, right? Because it is important to enjoy some of these things that we've been put on this earth to enjoy, right? I hope you enjoyed this clip from the Crypto Mining Show. If you would like to see more from this particular episode, take a look up here. Don't forget to also subscribe to the channel. And if you want to support me directly, you can go to sonofatech.locals.com and become a member. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next Tuesday.